that's everything from me. So now I'm going to hand over to the lovely Liz, and she's going to tell us about her passion for escape games. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Did I detect some feedback there? 100 novels that shaped our world as an escape game, picking out one of those novels and working on it. Have you already read the list? Have you picked one out that you want to work on, or have you got a favourite of your own that isn't on the list that you're looking for some help to turn into an escape room? So we have a bit.ly link there you can see on the right hand side of that illustration. That will take you to a Facebook group that's all about this series of events, and I'll be sharing there later on some links to literary inspired escape games and escape rooms that you can play online during COVID. So, and you can find other people to play them with as well if you want to. So I'll share that slide again at the end. So I'm Liz Cable. I teach digital and social media and transmedia production at Leeds Trinity University. I've run live action role play games for years and years, and about 5 years ago I did my first escape room, and I was particularly hooked into using escape rooms and escape games for learning. And I noticed a couple of people here saying in the comments they were interested in using it with their pupils as well. So this book just came out this year with Scott Nicholson, who's a Toronto-based professor of game design, and it has everything that we've learned about how to make escape games for education over the years. So I'm also involved in this Escape Your Stereotypes project, which is the last of the Erasmus funding. Now we're no longer in the EU, and I'm working with a company in Association Odyssey in France, and another company in Lithuania, to create an escape room and an escape game online that will enable people of different cultures to learn about each other and escape their prejudices and stereotypes. So if you want to be involved in that, let me know. There's some of my pictures of my happy students, and just some pictures of the games that I've created. If any of you knew about Codex at Leeds Doc, I think that was 2018 we did that. That was quite a good public game. So just in case you're completely new to escape games, a definition here is that escape games are basically a series of containers with coded locks on, and the containers have clues that help you discover the clues you discover help you find the code. So every time you open a box or open a container, you find something inside that helps move the story along. So these containers could be a door with a key or a combination code. Often it's a combination padlock. It could be a computer or a website with a password. It could be, say, a chest with a letter padlock, or it could be a person or an AI, a chatbot even, that can reveal information with the right question or the right trigger. And they can be completely physical and enclosed in physical space. They can be digital, or they can be a mix of the two of those. When I like to think about escape games in 3 different stages, and they are iterative, these stages, because sometimes a puzzle will come to you and you think, I've got to build a game around that, or a story will come to you, or you'll be given a location and asked to turn it into an escape room, or you've got a location, you want to turn it into an escape room. And so generally there are 3 phases. There's thinking about the location, the audience and the theme, or the genre or the aesthetic of it. What's it gonna look like? Where's it going to be set? Who are the audience going to be? So what's the level I need to do? Having said that, I have had the same escape game done by engineers as by brownies, and the brownies did it faster, because brownies are happier to fail faster than adults are. At least that's my explanation anyway. So you often don't have to level it, but in terms of reading level, you will have to think about that. Then there's another stage, which is looking at the puzzles and the narrative and how those all link together. I really like it when the puzzles have a reason to be there. There's a reason for them to be in the room and part of that narrative. And also looking at the player motivations. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. So different people have different learning styles, and it's useful to think about that when you're creating puzzles for teams, so that there's something for everybody to do in the room. And people can, if it's a maths puzzle, some people say, no, I don't want anything to do with that. If it's something to do with colours or design, I'm not very good at that. although I'm quite good at spotting puzzles in text and patterns in numbers. I'm not very good with design. So it's just thinking about how you can cater for lots of different players so everybody feels they get satisfaction from helping to solve the puzzles. And then you need to think about the sort of the mechanics of the game. So what's the flow going to be? Is it going to be they open one box and then another box and another box and they're all working together all the time? Or are you aiming for them to go out and do different things and then come back together later? How are you going to get the hints in there, and what sort of game variations? So you might be looking at creating tabletop games. I do that a lot. I've run 30 games at once before on tabletops in a conference centre. That was for the engineers. And I've also made 10 identical escape rooms side by side of the psychology labs at UCLan University. So different game variations as well. I'm going to assume today, though, that we're here to create a game that's going to be a traditional escape room, even if it's one that's done in your house or whatever location you've got, and you're going to have a team that's going to go through that together. So that's sort of the assumption that we're making today. So I've chosen 4 of the books from the 100 books that shaped our world. I was surprised how many I had read, but there are some sections that I've read none of them from, and I'm actually not sure I've read Hound of the Baskervilles. I think I'm just familiar with the story because I've seen so many adaptations of it on screen. And I think thinking about this as an adaptation of the book is really useful. If you think about the adaptations you've seen, all the different versions of Spider-Man there are, for example, or the way they rebooted Star Trek, you know, you think about all of those different things, and you know, Pride and Prejudice, which is there's the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was produced in the early 2000s, which is all about Lizzie Bennet, but it's all brought bang up to date, and it's all done by she's a YouTuber, and it's all done by Twitter and YouTube. So thinking about an adaptation is really useful, because it means when you're thinking about what you can afford to do, what you have time to do in the location you've got, you can think about, actually, how can I have the spirit of this story, the essence of this story, but within the constraints I've got. So I often talk about the constraints on your creativity. And in fact, it's easier to be creative, I think, within a constraint when you've got a problem to solve than it is to have a completely blank page. So I really welcome it when someone says, oh, well, you know, you've got to make this game for 300 students. It's like, oh, okay, and I know what the constraint is. I can fix that. So don't be put off if you don't happen to have, you know, the perfect spaceship or what have you for your, or castle if you're doing Game of Thrones. So these are 4 that these are the examples I'll pull from today as we're speaking. But I'd also really appreciate you putting some ideas in chat as you go along. And if you put some ideas in chat, you can name whatever the book is that you're thinking of adapting into an escape room, and then put your ideas in as well. Okay. So Artefacts of Story. Just let's just get your brains warmed up. What stories are these from? Do you want to put them in the chat? I don't know if my colleagues can read out what's going on in the chat, but can you tell me what stories these come from? Just trying to see if I can get into the chat. There's the chat. There we are. Jelly Babies is Doctor Who. Yeah, Hunger Games, The Mockingjay. Yeah, the Deerstalker hat. I mean, they even made they made a nod to that, didn't they? It was sort of operating on a meta level when he was given the hat in the latest series of Sherlock, and he's told, oh, you have to wear the hat now. Now you're a celebrity. The compass, or the alethiometer, somebody can spell. Well done, Francesca. Which is on the right, which is the golden compass. Sure, chocolate pie isn't from Matilda. That was a chocolate cake, but that's, yeah, good idea. Wizard of Oz, yes. It's not a cake, it's a chocolate pie. And it was called The Terrible Awful in the story that it came from. The Help, yes, that's right, Charlotte. So the Help hid something that wasn't very nice in the pie and then fed it to her ex-mistress, Hilly, who was a horrible creature. And the Terrible Awful was hidden inside the pie. Yeah. If you've read that or seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. But interestingly, if I just go back to the piece of artwork that we've had done for the game, for the whole games thing, You can see this one's Narnia. We've got dragons for Game of Thrones. We've got, if you're doing a game about Narnia, and if you go do the VR session as well, she's going to have to draw a lamppost in a wintry wood, because you can't have Narnia and not have that, and not have Turkish delight as well. Then we've got Frankenstein. We've got, I think that's V for Vendetta, Hound of the Baskervilles, and of course the Great Turtle with the World on its Back from Terry Pratchett. So these are artifacts of story, and the place I often start when I'm given either a theme, or which might be a mortuary, or I don't know why that came. I've done quite a lot of murder mysteries as escape rooms. That works really well, and also because I work with criminology students and forensic science students, so that sort of murder mystery thing really works very well in my field. So just think about, you know, if you were doing Peter Pan, for example, you've got the nursery, you've got sort of treasure maps, you've got flying through the night sky and astronomy, you've got mermaids in the lagoon, you've got pirates, you've got Indians. There are so many themes and things that you could do in a Peter Pan escape room. It would be fantastic. So have a look, have a go in the chat, and just tell me, for the novel that you've picked, and put the novel in, what artifacts you think you would have to put in it. What would you have to have in there for people to go, oh yeah, this is rats for 1984. Yeah, you'd have to have cameras, wouldn't you, as well? Cameras for 1984, the idea of Big Brother. Yeah, Swallows and Amazons penance. Yeah, I always loved that about the girl not being called Ruth anymore, because pirates are ruthless. Took me years to get that. Didn't get it till much later. Tubes to send messages. Yeah. For 1984. Yeah, those, what they're called. Yeah, I know what you mean. They used to have them in Schofield in town. I'm showing my age now. A TV screen you could interact with. Holes. Okay, that would be an interesting one. That's the Australian desert, isn't it? So there would be maybe some Aboriginal markings you might use there, but that's more setting than, you know, an artifact of the story. So it's really, it kind of gives you some, it's almost like fan service as well. So for people who have read the novel will be able to see these touch points and be really thrilled by them. And people who haven't read the novel will wonder, why was it important that there was a chocolate pie in there, or a jelly baby, or a deer stalk hat? Yeah, jumpsuits with like names in code on the back would be a great one, wouldn't it? Knickers. A donkey, peaches, knickers. Don't know where knickers is from. Games. The interesting thing about escape rooms is if you give them pieces of clothing, the players pieces of clothing, they will put them on. And so it's quite good fun to hide things on the inside of the clothing or in the pockets of the clothing, because often they will put the clothing on. I've bought those really cheap. I did of course, this was before we had a pandemic. I did a game based on a pandemic, and you're going to see some of the puzzles from that later. And you can buy these really cheap white boiler suits that are made of paper. And you know, they're like £2 each or something, so it's really fun to have those in the game. Same with deer stalk hats. Lab coats are perfect, yes, and the gloves and the goggles, you know, the whole business. Okay, well, thanks for that. Let's have a look at that in a bit more detail. So here's Doctor Who, and this is a particular Doctor Who. This is my doctor. This is Tom Baker, and the Doctor Who team do this unashamedly. Every doctor, you know, the second one had a flute. There's the one who wears the leek in his pocket. There's the one with the umbrella, and of course, my doctor is the one with the jelly babies. And it's so much a part of the story, an artifact of the story, that whatever version, if he's on in Springfield, or if he's in a comic, and this was from a crossover comic with Star Trek, which I didn't even know existed till I started researching this. You know, he's got jelly babies with him in Star Trek. It's that much a part of it. And these touch points are really important for the story. So this one, okay, this would be a great location. Who swims in this lake? Mr. Darcy, Colin Firth, exactly. That's not Pemberley, that's Lyme Park in Cheshire, but it's Pemberley to us, isn't it? Now, we can't have Pemberley itself, unfortunately, but if we were doing Pride and Prejudice, look at what I found online. This is a series of, it's a whole alphabet done as plans of glorious, fantastic and fictional manor houses. So something like that, a puzzle like that, or pictures on the wall, or, you know, could really bring that feeling of Pemberley into your escape room without you actually having to pay tens of thousands to hire this place. So think about what you have to have in your game. So what is the setting, the location, or the genre? Where are you going to have it? And if, like me, most of the time you've basically got a classroom, you have to think about, what can I bring into the classroom? Could it be a traveling chest from the early 1900s, for example, that could contain the whole escape room or the whole escape game within it? What artifacts, props and costumes would we like to have in the game, and that the players can try on? So, you know, Harry Potter, of course, you've got the sorting hat, you know, magic wands and things like that. Unless you copy them specifically, could be any wizarding game. But if you have a sorting hat, if you have Slytherin, Gryffindor, etc., if you have, I can't remember the name of the game, but Whomping Willows or what have you, there's certain things that are artifacts from that particular story. And your characters as well. You need to have an antagonist and a protagonist. So the players usually aren't the protagonist. Usually the players have been hired by someone to go on a mission, or they've been trapped and imprisoned by the antagonist, or they're there to complete the work of the protagonist. So you need somebody who's on their side, and who is the person who has maybe might be the person who is providing them with the hints and the help, but for some reason, memory loss I've used quite a bit when I was doing my pandemic room, and it was a zombie pandemic, of course, because I had to have bloody handprints on the window and things like that. So mine was a zombie pandemic. The person who had hired them had actually been bitten and was turning into a zombie, and therefore memory loss was one of the symptoms. So they couldn't solve all of their own security devices that kept the cure safe in the research facility. So it's really thinking about who would be there, what would the situation be. So the reason for the time limit in the zombie game was that the whole place was being evacuated, and they had to find the cure before the last helicopter left in, I think it was 45 minutes to start with. So you need to think, you don't have to have a time limit, and it doesn't have to be an escape room in the sense that you have to escape the room either. It can be a mission they have to fulfill in a certain time. So it might be, you know, if you're talking about Pride and Prejudice, some of those situations might be a wedding, you might be stopping an elopement, you might be participating in elopements, you might be helping someone elope, or you might be stopping an elopement. You might be trying to stop a duel, or you might be trying to get somebody to the duel on time or the church on time. So it's thinking about what are the sort of situations that would happen within the plot, and it's either ones that are actually from the book itself, or just ones that are in keeping with the sort of ideas that are inside the novel, that can give you those ideas for a time limit on the game, to make it into this time limited, usually 60-minute escape room. And then you need to think about what year and specific date it is set in, because this can really help you with props. I'm not very good at making big things, but I can print and I can design on WordPress, on Word or on PowerPoint, pretty much anything. There's tarot cards you can download online, loads of paper props you can use, and it's really useful to set the date in that way. But really think about also where in the story is it. Are you doing a prequel to the story? Are you doing something that's set after the story? Are you doing something that's contemporaneous with the story, so it's happening at the same time? I did a Robin of Sherwood, again showing my age, the one that had Ray Winston in it as Will Scarlet. I did a Robin of Sherwood adaptation as a series of live role play events, and we set it just after Michael Pryor died as Robin Hood, and before Jason Connery came in as Robin Hood, because we didn't like Jason Connery as Robin Hood. And I did a whole series that was set in that period where the Merry Men had no leader. In fact, Maid Marian took over, if I remember rightly. So really setting it very firmly within the timeline and within the locations inside the novel. And also think about, what does it sound? No, I don't know. Thank you, Marta. What does it sound like? You know, so for example, again, in my zombie escape room, we had a soundtrack. We didn't have any way of telling the time inside the game, but we had, other than a 45-minute soundtrack that had the noises of helicopters overhead. It had the noises of the announcement saying 30 minutes to go to the last flight, please pack your bags, all of these safety announcements, some sounds of screaming and gunfire, that kind of thing. So all of these things, and you can find these soundtracks from the BBC on YouTube, in fact, and on the BBC website as well. What does it smell like? I did a game that was based on an archaeological dig, and I got a smell of like turned earth, so it smelled very earthy. And I actually had to do that because the earth we were using was in fact chopped up bits of rubber like they use in children's playgrounds, and that smelled very rubbery. So we wanted to disguise that smell, so we used smell. But again, you know, if you're doing Pride and Prejudice, it might be, you know, it might be a smell of lavender or roses or perfume. I'm trying to think of a smell for Hound of the Baskervilles, and you know, I'm drawing a blank. But again, his Dark Materials has that kind of steampunk vibe going on. Steampunk, Hendrix has made gin very associated with steampunk. So not that I'm encouraging drinking in the rooms, but you might have a smell of juniper, or you might have, you know, something going on that has that. And then the other thing to think about is a hint system. And although with some of my educational games, especially when they're very quick group builders, you know, you've got 20 minutes to play a game, I won't have an in-character hint system. I'll just have envelopes on the table, or QR codes are really good as well. So they can just scan the QR code with their phone, and there's a QR code for each puzzle, and then they can go and look at that one online and go and find out what the hint is and use that. But I much prefer to actually have a hint system that sits inside the game. And so we'll think about that a little bit further on. Oh, KC says, Hound of the Baskerville, rotten eggs for the sulphur. Somebody else, sorry, you've gone off the top, sulphurous dog. Oh, Tilly's never been to an escape room. Well, hopefully this will make you want to go to an escape room, Tilly. The other thing is you can do is actually be inspired by the genuine history. Did you know that there is a fan language, for example, which would suit, you know, Pride and Prejudice again, wouldn't it? So actually having fans in pictures that mean some of these things. Follow me would be a good one, wouldn't it? If they had to move the picture and then find something behind it, you know. So there are genuine codes, and you know, you can be inspired by different locations as well. You know, if you're going to do something that's inspired by, I don't know, an Egyptian dig or something, you might have hieroglyphs in it or what have you. You might have Latin, and if it's about churches. Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, Sherlock Holmes uses a lot of codes inside the text, and I'm not really going to talk about codes a lot. Codes and ciphers are great. Anybody can write those. We're going to spend more, because I've only got a short time with you today, we're going to spend more time on puzzles today and how to build a puzzle. But you can layer a puzzle by adding a code or cipher to it. So as well as solving the puzzle, they've then got to decode it, or they've got to decode it and then solve it. So that's one of the ways of using codes and ciphers to layer puzzles and make it a little bit more difficult. So you can be inspired by genuine history, and it's amazing what you can find out if you just go spend half an hour Googling and realize the sort of things that you could pull into your game. You can also investigate the author's inspirations. So I read an interview with Philip Pullman where he was talking about, he invented these daemons because of these two images of ladies, one lady with an ermine and portrait of a lady with a squirrel and a starling. And the Leonardo da Vinci one, or the one that's attributed to him in the middle, lady with an ermine, that was actually a courtesan who was dating a bloke who's, well, having a fling with a bloke. I don't know what language to use. Anyway, having an affair d'amour with a bloke whose nickname was the ermine. So that's what that is all about. And then you start thinking about, oh, pictures are actually codes in themselves, and it can inspire all sorts of things. So if you follow the track the author went down, and a lot of them do have blogs and websites, and go look at the you know, the interviews with them if you can, if they're still around, and be inspired by that as well. So I want to have just a quick word with you about immersion. Which is kind of the holy grail of escape rooms, or it may or may not be. It might be fun. Scott, who I was writing the book with, said that, you know, in the end, it might be educational, but it's all got to round up to fun. And it's very true. But immersion is something that you're really looking for. But when I discuss this with other escape room designers, and indeed even other escape game designers or just board game designers, thinking about this in terms of the broad church of games that you might produce for the Games Jam, you know, immersion, does it mean what you think it means in this context? So there's a sort of a physical immersion, and we're very lucky if we are able to create a set that is so physically immersive that people feel they were transported. You know, the set is amazing, it's jaw-dropping. And a lot of theatrical groups during the pandemic have started doing these immersive events online where you can see that they are, you know, inside a location that looks absolutely fantastic, even though you are actually looking at it through your screen. So physical immersion is something that you can aim for, but a lot of us don't have that sort of budget. Sometimes you have to think about, how can I do a Pride and Prejudice game inside a classroom? Happily, there are other types of immersion. There's also emotional immersion or engagement, where people really get on the side of the characters. This can happen particularly if you decide as a games master to have a character in the game or be a character in the game who is going through some sort of story arc while you are in the game with the characters. Or I played one game where we were being teased by a master thief who kept emailing us and sending us messages via a computer. And, you know, and he was really smart. And obviously the people who designed the games were very good writers. And so he really had a character, and he really got up our noses. So that was really great. We really were thinking, we just want to beat this guy, never mind leaving the room. You know, we want to beat this guy and make sure he goes to prison. So it was so cool. I was so frightened. I forgot about the puzzles. I just wanted to get out of there. There's a few horror games out there that sort of aim to engender this real sense of being in danger or being haunted. They aren't my favorite type of game, but if you're in the mood for it, they're great. And then another type of immersion is intellectual immersion or flow, which is what we aim for as educators. You know, or when you're doing your work and you're really, really into it. I was really in the zone. I didn't notice the time passing. I feel great. So really looking for that intellectual flow. And the guy who is the main reference on this is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Yes, I pronounced it right. And he talks about, he has this plan that you can see on the screen where you're looking at along the bottom of the player's skills. They might have low skills to high skills. And the challenges might be low to high challenges in terms of their difficulty. And you really want to get them where they are just being stretched. The players are just being stressed beyond the point at which they are already familiar with. So you're just pushing them into that, educators call it the zone of proximal development, or the ZPD, which sounds like something off Stargate. But that's what we're trying to do. So they're really engaged, intellectually engaged in what they're doing because their skills are being built. And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi said the best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times. The best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched. And that's what we want. We want the best moments, really. We want people to build memories of this game that teach them about themselves and the relationships they have with the other people in the room. At least that's one of the aims I have. So just a quick, again, we can't go into this in too much detail, but just to make you aware, there are different pathways through a game. As I mentioned earlier, you can have a linear puzzle flow. And when I'm playtesting a game, I will often start with linear. I'll start with a linear game because then you can really make sure everybody's working on the same thing at the same time. And you can get an idea of the length of time it takes to for a particular puzzle to be done. I mean, obviously, I playtest each puzzle separately as well, but eventually when I bring them together, I usually start with a linear puzzle flow for the first playtests. And what this makes people do as well is work together, because if they can't be doing something else, they have to be working on this. Another way of designing your game is an open puzzle flow. So you can have a game where each of the boxes in a game, or each of the padlocks, each of the puzzles can be done. And then every single puzzle opens a box. that then gives you part of the code to open the final door or to open the final container or whatever it is. And generally what you end up with is a mix between open puzzle flow and linear puzzle flow, which looks something like this if we look at an individual puzzle. So you might have two boxes on a table. I use this a lot as an icebreaker. If I just want like a 15-minute game that's just an icebreaker or a group builder so that people can get to know their team, because the rapport that escape rooms and escape games build, the rapport happens really quickly and the team get to know each other through the task instead of those other, I find quite excruciating sometimes, icebreakers that people can create. So what you have is one box. Puzzle 1 opens box 1 and it has a piece of puzzle 3, but you have to also solve puzzle 2, open combination 2, get the other piece of puzzle 3, put those together, and then you can open the final box. So this is my standard 3 5-minute puzzles in a 15-minute game, because it does take them 5 minutes to get their head in the game. So 5 minutes to get their head in the game, 5 minutes where they split up and they do puzzle 1 and puzzle 2 separately, and then 5 minutes when they come together for puzzle 3. So just another quick one I have to go through, which is prototyping and play testing and making sure that the whole puzzle, the whole game flows together and has a flow to it. And you can think of it as the dramatic arc if you want to look up, you know, the film arcs where you have, you know, act 1, act 2, rising tension, act 3, you know, all of that. Have a look at that, but we haven't got time today. I just want to make some points, which is to make a paper or a digital prototype. So I use WordPress as a blogging platform, which allows you to put passwords on individual posts, which means that I can make players enter the password for the previous puzzle or the combination for the previous puzzle, the solution, before they go into the next section. Or I mock up a paper type, so a paper prototype. So this, I literally use cards to plan it all out. Or in this case, it wasn't even cards, it was just bits of paper. This was one of my first big games for 300 students. Case of the Rocket Man, it was a half-hour game. And it worked really well for me to be able to say, okay, what's going to be in the room that might be part of a puzzle later on, but is in the room and is there all along? And what is it that I'm going to put in the boxes and hide away? So the whole point of an escape room often is you have to find the pieces of the puzzle that are relevant to each other, and you have to find or deduce the lock that they open before you can solve the puzzle. Otherwise, it's really bad practice to have all the same kind of lock visible at the same time. Because if you've got 12 locks in a room and they're all 4-digit number locks and you get a 4-digit code, you need to have some hint as to which one to open. You don't want to have to make the players open all of them. So you can just see quickly looking at this cards that I've used to mock up my flow. The little round circle at the top of the first one is a directional padlock. Then I've got a 5-letter word lock. Then I've got a 3-number lock. Yeah, and then I've got 2 things that you have to find. And then I've got a briefcase at the end with the blueprints in it that they had to find, with the 2 3-digit locks on it. So just making sure that there are different types of locks, and also that means you're making different types of puzzles as well. Although I will show you later on how you can transpose if you haven't got lots of different types of lock, and the ones that aren't number locks are more expensive, to be honest. I'll show you a way of transposing different solutions onto different combination locks later on. So how to deliver the hints. So in the chat, could you put, no, you don't need to pay for that. That's a standard thing for, sorry, Roger said you need to pay for having passwords on WordPress. No, you don't. Every blog post type, you can say, I want it to be private or I want it to be public. And when it's private, it says, okay, what's the password? So it's a standard way of delivering. So thinking about, I've got The Hound of the Baskervilles, I've got George Orwell's 1984, Pride and Prejudice, or His Dark Materials, or any of the other novels. How are you going to deliver the hints? So here I'm suggesting that you could have, well, for Pride and Prejudice or for Hound of the Baskervilles, there could be this butler type person that delivers the hints and comes in. And sometimes it doesn't need to even be a hint. It can just be, oh, sir, do you want me to clear this up for you? Or have you still not finished with it yet? You know, some sort of in character indication that, you know, that's what they need to be looking at next. We did this when we did Codex, which was a building site. We had a builder that sort of came in and sort of went, oh, health and safety, and sort of, you know, pointed out to the players completely in character where they needed to be looking next, without actually saying to them, this is a hint and you're being a bit thick because you're not solving this. Personally, I like games to all be solvable in character, inside the world of the game. I don't like breaking the fourth wall to deliver hints if I can help it. Although I did say I've used envelopes before now, and QR codes. Oh, by the way, when you do that both times, if it's in a competition game, I will penalise them. So if it's a 20-minute game and there's 4 hints, I'll penalise them 3 minutes for every QR code they look up, or 3 minutes for every envelope that they open. So have a look. Tell me, who do you think in Pride and Prejudice or Hound of the Baskervilles or 1984, how could you deliver the hints in character or within the spirit of the game? I did one that was based, what was it? It was in Amsterdam, and they had a mad monkey that shoved pieces of paper under the door, or badly drawn pictures, like a child's pictures. This monkey was pushing them under the door, which was completely crazy, but it didn't break that fourth wall. They met, I forget why there was a mad monkey in the next room in the plot and why he was helping us, but it didn't matter. It didn't break the fourth wall quite as much as, you know, knocking on the door and saying, can you give me a hint, please? So Stella, yeah, notes down a tube. Damon's, yeah, you could have puppets, couldn't you? I've seen it done with like parrots in cages where the parrot talks to you, or with a Cyberman's head for Doctor Who. You could have the Cyberman talking to you. Oh, a pipe starts smoking near where something is, yes. Or lights. Pride and Prejudice, Hannah says, hints in the form of gossip. I like that. Just trying to see if I've missed any. Let's see if I can scroll up. Computer monitor for 1984. Yeah, I can't pronounce that name, but somebody suggested Watson. I had messages from Watson, a game I did called The Locked Room, which was a Sherlock Holmes story for English students learning about the detective genre of detective fiction. We had letters from Watson that just gave them a little hint further along saying, oh, I found this out, I found this out. So you could have somebody who is there to help them, but is off screen. One of the things I've had as well is you have a walkie-talkie in the room that they find halfway through. I've had a phone ringing in a body bag, so they had to open a body bag to get the phone out that was ringing, and then that person told them some more information. Street urchins, yeah, or the regulars, the Baker Street boys. That's it, the Baker Street boys. Old mobile phones with one contact number. Yes, these are all good ideas. And the idea about the pipe, I really like the pipe smoking. You can also do that with lights as well. Have lights go on in the corners of the room. There could be a ghost helping them, a spirit helping them, which might be the excuse for the lights going on. Fans flapping in certain ways, as that's how they communicate in the period of Pride and Prejudice. Yes, I like that, Tilly. Yeah, so really thinking about how not to break the immersion. You know, it's going to be hard enough to get people into that zone anyway, without them having to think about the mechanics of breaking out of the game and going doing something. And personally, I don't believe in, you know, when you're doing an in-character game rather than a competition game, a lot of commercial escape rooms are by their very nature competition games. If I don't have a time limit, I prefer not to use one, and not to penalise people for taking hints. Projected video, that's a good idea. There are these projectors you can get that can project anywhere, like little holograms. And I was thinking of Alice in Wonderland, you could have the Cheshire Cat and you could just have the smile appear, you know, it'd be quite good fun to do that. So thanks for that. Hopefully you're getting those little grey cells whirring, as Poirot would say. Is Agatha Christie on the list? I'm not sure. Maybe one of our librarian friends can answer that question. Okay, so where are we going to next? Ah, this is it. This is the meat and potatoes and 2 veg of it. This is designing the puzzles themselves. How do you go about actually putting puzzles together? So I ran Young Inventors Club for Playful Anywhere in Leeds, and they've got a festival of play going on this week. If you haven't come across it yet, Love to Play 2021. This was actually a puzzle designed by a 7-year-old within 15 minutes of meeting me and being told he was designing escape games. You know, so can anybody answer this for me? Can anybody tell me what the answer to this is? Yes, Tilly, you can have a mix of live actors, puppets and animation as part of an escape room. Yes, you can. I mean, as long as your budget will allow it and your skills will allow it. Absolutely. I have final year students doing transmedia production, and they create the whole thing. Last year they did an escape room, and because of the pandemic, they couldn't do the escape room live, and so they staged it in someone's house, and it was somebody who was on the inside who was live video doing a live Facebook Live. And it worked really, really well. People were helping that person, an avatar game, as it's known now. They were helping that person actually solve the puzzles in the room. And then at some point, somebody came into the house and they had to hide under the stairs. And so the video cut off. And what that meant was this audience of people could only hear what was happening. And that meant that they could design whatever they liked in the escape room. They said it was an underground chamber and it was full of people in cryogenic suspension. And, you know, and it didn't matter because the players had all bought into it already through the video. And then when it switched to audio, they were hooked, absolutely hooked, trying to help this person stumble around in this enormous science fiction cavern full of sleeping bodies underneath this house. So it's amazing what you can do if you do use, you know, this blend of digital and physical and all of these different things you can do. So we've got some suggestions. So we've got woof. Let me turn it around this way. Some of you have got it already. Yeah, so woof is 4003. But actually, that's only half the puzzle. You've realized that the letters can be transposed for numbers if you turn it around this way. But if you just say 4003, you're not using the other half of the puzzle. So now you have to put 4003 in the order of 1432. So the first digit is 4, the fourth digit is 3, the third digit is 0, and the second digit is 0. So the answer is 4300, which several people have got. Yeah. Is it 4300? Yes, it is 4300. So, and this really demonstrates, one, that escape rooms are for any age group, as is escape room designing. Get your kids doing this, it'd be fantastic. But two, it shows how you can have two parts to a puzzle, and each of those bits of the puzzle could have been come to through any number of ways, but it shows how by layering two bits together you can get a puzzle, which means sometimes if you just want to do something really flashy, or you want to have a code or a cipher and not just have it as one layer, you can layer something else on top of it. So you can even do things like, if you're a teacher like me, have tasks for students to fulfill, but by layering that task with an element that's a puzzle, or by layering it with something that's like a reveal, like an ultraviolet reveal or a red reveal, or one of these other tools you can use that suddenly makes something else appear that wasn't there before, you can make these puzzles layered. It's an easy way of making a puzzle. Okay. So I said I'd talk a little bit about Howard Gardner. So here are 8. He's actually come up with another model now. There's 9, actually. I forget what the 9th one is as well, which is really bad of me. But anyway, I'm only putting it up here so you can have a Google. So have a Google, not now, that would be rude. Have a Google of Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. And when I do this escape room workshop with escape game designers, they like this because you can see that there are 8 different types of puzzles that you could make that would appeal to people who have 8 different preferences. Now, I'm not saying you only have one of these. We all have a mix. But for example, I'm much more word smart and logic smart than I am physical body smart and music smart. So if there's a physical task in the room, I'm not the person doing that. If there's a word task in the room, I am on it and woe betide anybody who gets in my way when I'm trying to solve it. So this is just really useful to bear in mind. You might want to take a screenshot of it. We are giving these out. There is a PDF of these slides which we'll send you afterwards, and we'll also put it in the Facebook group as well for the Games Jam, so you won't need to miss out on this. But just as we're going through types of puzzles, just applying them to these as you go along is an interesting way of making sure you've got a good variety of puzzles in your escape room that appeal to lots of different players. The other thing you need to remember is you need to design to the padlock. In the end, your puzzle must get boiled down to letters, and they must be the letters and the words that are on your word lock. I did one once with some librarians in Nottingham, and one of them had Timbuktu as the answer. And what we did was we produced a telephone directory with area codes in it for all of the different countries. And so they looked at Timbuktu, and it was the area code for Timbuktu that then opened the lock. Do you see what I mean about layering? Because, you know, Timbuktu obviously doesn't fit on that kind of padlock. It would, of course, fit as a password on to get into a computer, or a password on a WordPress post or a file or something. So you can use those in different way. Mostly you're using number locks or letter locks. In the bottom right, notice there's one there that is coloured locks. So you can do something with the colours as well in your puzzle for that one. So rather than giving an order, you give a colour for each number as part of your puzzle. You've got the traditional lock at the bottom, which is a locker lock, the American locker lock. You've got a directional lock second in on the left. And the one at the bottom left is the amazing emoji lock, which I haven't managed to get hold of yet. But you could actually put stickers over each of those and just do whatever you like. The only problem I have with this lock is it comes preset. You want to make sure when you're buying padlocks that you're buying padlocks that you can reset the combination, and that you can reset it multiple times. You can keep resetting the lock. So make sure you buy a resettable padlock. The one in the bottom left is great if you're teaching digital skills or something about social media, absolutely fantastic, but it comes preset and you cannot say what your particular emojis are going to be on that lock. So you just need to be careful about that. And just quickly as well, all of these are fat, solid hasp staples, can't remember, but the loopy bit at the top, you can get them so they're wire, and you can then put them around things like the top of duffel bags or shoe bags, which are quite cheap. You can buy a shoe bag or make a cheap shoe bag, and then you can put the padlock round the inside instead of the drawstring. So anything that you could drawstring, you can put, it's called a flexible shackle padlock. Okay, so you can find, or a cable padlock. Okay, there are other types of locks. So a mimetic lock is where you have to give the information to somebody and they will give you an answer. So when I'm doing induction games at the university, they have to go ask a librarian a question, and the librarian will tell them the answer, and that's then the book they have to go and find. And, you know, so you can actually, and books themselves are containers. If you think about indexes and chapters, there's loads of puzzles you can make with books, but that's another story. Digital ones, as I've discussed, but also there are things like technical things. So you can have mag locks that you break. You can have things that you have to put in position using RFID. You can have the barely concealed is a paint that you can use, and when you connect the pieces of paint together, so you know, it charges, and you could maybe power a light that actually has the numbers on it, or a fan stops moving and it's got the numbers on the blades. I hate that particular puzzle actually, but there's all sorts of things you can do. So think widely, you know, when is a padlock not a padlock? You know, there are other things you can use, because what you're basically doing is gating the content of the game. You're saying you can't move through here until you've done something. It doesn't have to be an actual lock with a key or a combination. This is really useful. So if you're talking about ordering things, there are only 5 ways that you can organize information, either by their location, by the alphabet, by time, category, or hierarchy. Now, hierarchy, what it means by that is magnitude. So it might be by size, or it might be by weight. Yeah, so putting something in order reveals something else. So I often do a puzzle in libraries with book spines. So when you put the books in Dewey order, there's actually letters written across the spines because I've put masking tape to make the shape of those letters on the spines. So this is just a really useful one to remember, again, for those layering puzzles as well. So you can layer something by saying, well, they've found out the right information, but now they've got to order it in some way. So it's another way of adding that additional layer. This is a puzzle from, well, we've actually used the same puzzle twice. We used it in Codex, which I said was a building site. And we also used it in our pandemic game. And so this was a poster. You can see it just looks like a prop. It looks like it belongs in a lab, or even on a variety of it with a safety, a high-vis jacket and safety drilling masks. You can see how that would work for a building site as well. And then when they find those items and they search the items for numbers, they'll be able to get a code, because the code will be in the order that the pictures are on the poster. A directional lock clue, give them a map, give them resources with dates of the main events, or in my police oriented games where they're solving a crime, it will be a police report saying, you know, where the victim went, where he went by either by CCTV or somebody followed him, a detective might have followed them, the suspect, and then they have to figure out from the map what the directions are and use a directional lock. Or if you give them, this one here is for the War of the Roses, of course, and by putting the dates in order with the main events, then cross-referencing the locations, that will then also give them a directional lock. So there's 2 layers to that. Yeah, there's 2 layers to that version, because they have to put the dates in order, cross-reference with the location to solve it. Or you could just say, here are the locations, and they would just solve it directly from the locations. So this idea of building layers up is really important. Sometimes when you make a puzzle, you aren't quite sure how you've layered it, and it's only by playtesting, when the players do it, you think, I've taken it a bit far there, I need to keep it simple, stupid. That's what my daughter always says to me, keep it simple, because you might have just made it too hard for people to solve. So understanding the layers is really helpful. How am I doing for time? Okay, so this is the game that has been shelved at the moment, but it was about a pandemic. I wonder if any of you can solve this one. Now, in this case, again, the poster of the initial phases of the pandemic alert is just on the wall. It was all based in a doctor's lab where they had been trying to find a cure for the virus. And there were various just props around the room that looked like they would be in the room. And then the briefcase actually had these coloured dots on it. So the first one, I'll just give you a minute to solve it. Anybody know what the first one is? Yes, well done. Charlotte's done it. 4, 2, 3. So it's very simply, blue is 4, yellow is 2, and orange is 3. And then on the second one, you've got what colours make green? It's yellow and blue. So that's a 6. And the colours that make purple are red and blue, so that's a 5, and then you've got the red at the end. So well done. Hannah as well did it too. Well done, everyone. Yeah, so you can see how what we're trying to do there is make a connection between the parts of the puzzle. So the briefcase is hidden somewhere, the poster's on the wall, but by putting the circles on the numbers and by making sure we have the identical colours, and again, circles on the briefcase, well, what you have to do, Sue has said, how do you deal with colour blindness? Well, Sue, hopefully, because they're working in a team, there will only be 1 or 2 of them with colour blindness, not all 5 or 6 of them. Oh, by the way, 5 is my preferred number for people in a team. When you're trying to get people, 6 seems to be too much, 4 seems to be too much. Yeah, crossing fingers. But also you can give them hints, you know. Later on, there is actually another poster that they can find, which has 5 and 6 on it as well. But that still doesn't solve the colour blindness thing. What it does solve is the problem that kids solve this really quickly. A lot of adults have problem with paint mixing because it's not something we do every day, colour mixing and paint mixing. Whereas primary school kids, the brownies and the cubs, absolutely storm this one, no problem at all. So one of the things you can do as well is have a storyboard of some description. So again, I used this in the pandemic game with the progression of the disease. So first they were quite happy playing tennis, then they got snuffly, then they went to hospital, then they died, and then they rose from the grave because it was a zombie game. Thinking about how you would getting the players to put it in order, and you can immediately see the educators amongst you how this is quite useful. But you could also do the progression of a courtship. That would be a bit nice, wouldn't it? That would be the progression of solving a crime, you know, whatever you need to do to match the theme. So Tilly is talking about accessibility. If there's maybe a group of learning disabled people or visually impaired people. I did quite a bit of research on this, Tilly. There is actually a game in Scotland that's completely in the dark. It's pitch black. And there are several games I could recommend to you that I played with a blind student. She was completely blind. Well, she wasn't completely blind, but she could just see very little. And there's some escape rooms she could do and some she couldn't do. And it is interesting. Again, playtest, 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 and find out. One of the things that help with, with things like the little spots of color is you could actually make them textured spots of color instead, or you could actually put numbers that only the blind person can see, can feel. You could put braille actually on the button. So if you're going to have somebody, or you want to make sure that it's accessible, then you just have to think about that in the game design. And don't be afraid of putting things in for that, like braille, etc., so that the blind person, if they know braille, can use that, whereas other people are looking at visual cues. Sue says she did a game in London in the dark as well. Personally, I hate it, and I take a torch with me and a magnifying glass because I'm of that age that I need a magnifying glass and a torch in a dark escape room. This is a puzzle I created online. This is on Instagram, and it's very simply, I don't normally use crossword type puzzles, but this one was very specifically a puzzle hunt game, and not an escape room, based at helping students with their research skills and understanding how to look up synonyms. So when they're researching things, they need to understand what synonyms are. So they were looking for a 5-letter synonym for each of these, and one of the synonyms began with D, one with A, one with H, one with S, one with Y. So antitoxin, for example, is serum, minority is youth, seraph is angel, expiration is death, and mortal is human. And when you put those in order, you get heart, and heart is then the code that opens the lock. So some of the games I do are very specifically around specific skills and aren't particularly buried under any story at all. They're just there to be puzzles and to be an enjoyable way of discovering about a subject. Another one is a graph of anything. So this one is actually the vitamins A to E with their Sunday names. And so you can actually use graphs in any way. If this would be, sorry, I'm being distracted by the chat. I'm going to leave the chat for a minute. I'm going to go through this and then I'll come back to your questions a little bit later on. So if you've got a game, like we've got a game in a lab, or we did quite a lot of games in labs actually, because it's very easy to do a lab-based thing inside a classroom at a university, or even a lab at a university. So I do a lot of lab-based games, but you could have coloured bars. So you could see how this would apply to the coloured lock that I showed you earlier. You could just literally translate the graph to the coloured lock. Of course, they wouldn't be given just one graph. You'd have distractors in the puzzle as well. So one of the ways you build a puzzle is to have, well, these are the things they need. These are the graphs, the graph they need, but here's the other graphs. And there's another clue, or they have to use their knowledge to actually get rid of the graphs they don't need. And then they're left with this one. And this one is actually has the clue. So here's a puzzle. This one you see quite often, actually. Anybody know the answer to this one? Yeah, 5930. So if you just put a line down the middle and just look one side of it, on the left-hand side of it, you can see it's just numbers mirror reflected down the middle. Okay, so how about, there we are. How about this one? Yep, 3059, because you're taking the colors, the numbers in the order of the colors. Okay. How about this one? So I'm not using all the images now. I've got 6 images. I'm only using 4 of them. Yeah, it is so easy to overthink it, Claire, you're right. So we've got 6721 is the suggestion. Yeah. 6271. Somebody's saying 6524. I don't know where the 6524 is coming from. Maybe that's the answer to the previous one. So this one, the black is last, so it should be 1 at the end. So if we do them in order of the colours, we get blue 6, red 2, 7 green, so it's 6271. Yeah, so well done those of you who got that right. So this is how you build, and you could have a lot more as well. And generally speaking, you have 10 because you have 0 to 9, because you get 0 to 9 on a padlock. So generally speaking, you'd have 6 detractors or distractors, and 4 that the players have to pick out. These are the relevant ones. And in this case, it's because the colours match, but it could be for any sort of reason. And then those that they have to get rid of 6, pick out 4, and then put them in the right order. Yeah, you see how we're building the puzzles. Okay, so yeah, 6271. Now, this is how we deal with one of the ways you can deal with if you want to have an answer like Timbuktu or what have you. So give them an old-fashioned phone. This is interesting, actually. Sometimes escape rooms give a really old-fashioned phone, you know, the one with the dials. And I'll tell you, Generation Z cannot, which is 6-year-olds to 24-year-olds of Generation Z, they cannot work an old phone at all. It's quite hilarious. And this is in fact going out. But what we tend to do is put an old Nokia in the room somewhere, so that there will be a Nokia in the room, so they can look up, or there'll be some sort of keypad that means they can transpose the letters to the numbers, or even the numbers to the letters. I've done it with thumbprints as well. You know, so transpositions is really useful to do. And if you have a directional padlock, when you buy these actually come with a set of stickers. So it might be a set of stickers that I think it comes with the suits in a game, in a pack of cards. And it comes with various other ones as well. So it doesn't have to be north, south, east, west, or left, up, down, right. You could actually have, as I've done here, the images from around the room put in the right order. You could actually have more than one as well. There's nothing to stop you having, you know, Colonel Mustard in the library with the lead piping, and actually having more than one option for each of the 4 directions that the directional lot will go. So once you start thinking like that and realizing that you can either put stickers on the padlocks and then paste over them with nail varnish if you want them to be robust, or you can actually just have somewhere in the room, there's a little table, a little scribbled note or what have you that explains how the symbols or how the numbers or how whatever it is you're using maps to the padlock. That can be really useful. It opens up a whole world of different types of puzzles is what I'm trying to say, because you're no longer bound to just 4 or just 5 and just letters or just numbers. You've got all of these other options as well. So time for questions, etc. That was a bit of a whistle stop tour. I hope it was useful. We've got, I think, another 20 minutes for questions and answers. I'm going to scroll up and have a look in the chat what people were doing. And if you want to go to bit.ly/100 books games jam, so books and games is plural and it's all lowercase, that will take you to the Facebook group. If you would like to carry on learning with us, or find people to join you for the game jam in your escape game team. I hope it's encouraged some of you to build an escape game for the challenge. So the link to the group is in the chat. Crystal Maze is being mentioned in there. Yes, you'll get the slides. Stella says she worked in a library that shelved collections by spine height. Oh my gosh. I started watching an organizer video over Easter because I thought, you know, I need to get my house organized. And the first thing the woman said was, oh, shelve all of your books in rainbow order. And I thought, what use is that to anyone, shelving your books in rainbow order? So I didn't watch the rest of that video. However, you could make a puzzle that way. Let's have a look. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to unmute. In fact, shall I close these slides down? Has everybody got the... I'll stop sharing if I know how to do it. Stop share. There we are. Hello. Okay, so I'm just... Now, we were talking about Braille. That's right. Interestingly enough, some people do use brailles because it's basically another code. You need to be careful with that. I've only just realized there are several versions of braille. So if you have a multicultural group, they won't necessarily have learned the version of braille that you're using if it is a blind person, so you need to be careful. And a lot of people make puzzles that are where you have to feel in the dark some numbers that are just made out of tacks. So it's not really braille, it's just, yes, you could use that Morse code. Yes, it is. It's just like Andy, you're just right, it's just like Morse code. Yeah, you could hide a sheet in the room. If you're really into this stuff, there's something called Puzzled Pint that's on the first Tuesday of every month. It used to be down at the White Swan in Leeds, and it's a worldwide movement called Puzzled Pint, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. You go down to the pub and you solve puzzles for the evening. And the first time I went, I won, yay! So that sort of, it must be easy. If I can do it, anybody can. Because although I love puzzles for education, there's no way I ever win any of the competitions. I'm not that fast. Yeah, the GCHQ puzzle book is a good one. That's something we should do in the Facebook group, actually. Claire and Rianne is put some books that are good puzzle books. So fantastic talk. Oh, good, thank you. So it's going to be on YouTube, this video, so your brother can watch it on YouTube. Somebody said, Tilly, yeah, your brother can watch it on YouTube. Yeah, the transposition thing. The day I had that realization, it was like, ding, oh my gosh, I can make so many more puzzles now. I'm not cursed by the padlock. Yes, really good. I don't know about the Medway Gaming Festival. Tilly, could you put a link in the chat, please? Via Lucuta, if you go to Facebook, there's a Facebook group on intercultural escape room design, which I run, and that has a methodology in it that we're looking for feedback on at the moment for designing intercultural escape rooms. To be honest, it's a methodology for designing any kind of escape room. It goes, for those of you who are teachers, I've done a model of 7 different ways you can use escape rooms for learning, so you might like to have a look at that. I will put a link up, yes. I will put a link up. So if anybody would like to unmute, ask a question, put a question over there. I'm just going to go and find this link to the Facebook group, Intercultural.
Can I just say that was really great, Liz? I have learned so much from you. And I mean, a lot of this is stuff that I've done in various escape rooms and that we've tried to use, but you've kind of just brought it all together into one place, which is just brilliant. I really, really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. So that's the Facebook group for the Intercultural Escape Room project. And there is a copy of the methodology in there. It's like 80 pages of A4 or something. It took me ages. So as far as I'm concerned, the more people that read it, the better. One of the things I learned while I was doing it is across the world, they use different tally systems. So, you know, we do 4 strokes and then a cross through it to count. And that's not how other people do it across the world. It's fascinating. And of course, it then makes you think, oh, puzzles. Oh, that's really nice. What a nice thing to say. Thank you, Paul. Had an amazing puzzle with 6 languages in a few years back that could be pared down for a couple of languages. Oh, I'd like to know what that's about, Charlotte.
And
oh, hang on a mo. I just want, sorry, I just remembered. I had somebody and I had a girl who was blind playing one of the games I did for UCLan. And one of the puzzles I'd written was a verbal puzzle where, as they read it, it was clear that there was like, so it was things like, what I ate this for dinner and it was 8. And what is that for? And the answer was 4. And it was the blind person who solved it because she was the only one that was listening, whereas everybody else was reading. And that was really interesting. Hunt for the Cheshire Cat. I know, and Sherlock, the game is now, has just done an outdoor game, one of the best, the most amazing. If you're a fangirl of Sherlock, They did the most amazing escape room that was based inside a fake opticians in a shopping mall in London. Of course, they've closed down because of the pandemic, but they've just opened up another one it's called The Game Is Now, and it's all around the streets of London. And it's got Andrew, what's his face, who's Moriarty in it, and you know, all of the people in it, which is fantastic. There's one in Leeds, which is the Doctor Who one, is in the which isn't on the book of the list of, but it's an adaptation. So on the basis of adaptation, go and have a look. Rapture Gaming Festival, thank you. Apparently there's a different, Stella, there's a different Doctor Who escape room in Manchester. And Bristol, I think. So there's only one in Leeds, but it's actually a different one. So we must go do that when it's open again and we don't have to wear masks, which might be a while. So I'm sorry if your brains are rocking and are reeling. You can get.
I've just got a very practical question.
Yes.
For submitting an escape game for the Games Jam.
Yes.
So we don't need it to be a completely finished, huge hour-long game. But I was just thinking, what would you suggest that people might submit? Like maybe the plan, like you did.
Yeah, you could submit something as simple as that picture that I had on the slides that just says this is how it works, and then describe each of the elements. So just have all of the lock boxes. And I often just do a paper prototype and I just put it in one of those files, but you could submit it online. You could create a WordPress is free. So you could create a free WordPress blog and you can password protect on the free version. So you can create that. My daughter made a version of a Sherlock Holmes game, which we put on WordPress for playtesting. So I'll put a link to that in the Facebook group so people can see how we did that. World's longest hyperlink to the 6 languages puzzle from MIT Hunt. Thank you. I'll save this chat to a file again and pop it up in the on the Facebook group so that you can refer back to it all. Yeah, I've been to Budapest and played escape games. They were the ones that kind of kicked it all off. Budapest sort of became the hub of escape rooms in the world. Partly because they were in a massive recession. So they had loads of city centre properties that were empty, and so they turned them into escape room. Vio, you can't play mine at the moment. There aren't any of my games in the public domain. There was one in Utrecht, but it was closed down by the pandemic. Google Forms, yes, Andy. People have used Google Forms really easily. Yeah, the Red Bull competitions, Team S Squared has done that for the last couple of years, I think, on behalf of England. The guy who designs the Red Bull competitions wrote the book with me, Scott Nicholson. So he designs the Red Bull games, and the guy who checks it for sense is Ken Ferguson, who runs the Exit Games blog, and the logic escapes me. So yeah, it is cool. Buy my book. No, get it from the library. Have you got a copy in your library? That's a good point, actually.
If not, we definitely will get one. Once we're open again.
Yes, definitely need to get one. Fantastic. Tilly's asking how you started in your career, Liz.
Is she asking everyone? I just have played games since I was tiny, and I have 3 siblings, and they refused to play with me, and because they said I cheated. And so my mum started playing games with me, and she just realized I didn't cheat. Whenever I played the game, I understood what the mechanics were about. And I think that's why now I can say I'm more fascinated by making games and seeing that it's like it's the same vocation as being a teacher. You want to see the light go on in someone's eyes, that moment when the penny drops, you go, yes, that's great. So, and it's the same for me. So escape games for me are tools for teaching and tools for bonding. They get teams working together really quickly, and it's very exciting. And also it's just fun to indulge a bit of fantasy. You know, I'm now really thinking about a Pride and Prejudice escape room. It's about the only adaptation that hasn't been done. We've got a list of games based on the books, haven't we, that we've put somewhere in this series of events. There's a game called Marrying Mr. Darcy, which is a fabulous card game. Oh, Sue says she's just bought the book. And Fiona, thank you. I'm so cheeky, I'm sorry. So I'll see you all